I always believed that love was supposed to feel safe. My name is Amira. I'm 34, a teacher by profession, fiercely independent, with a tendency to overthink. I've always been the kind of woman who notices small things, little shifts in tone, glances that linger too long, silence that feels heavy. Maybe that's why what happened didn't surprise me completely, though it still shattered me in ways I didn't know were possible. We lived in a modest two-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind where neighbors wave good morning and you hear the same birdsong every dawn. My husband, Samir, worked in finance, always sharp in appearance, well-spoken and calm. Calm to a fault, even when life felt like it was falling apart. We'd been married for 7 years. Comfortable. Predictable. Too predictable, maybe. The first sign that something was wrong was subtle, almost laughably minor. I remember standing in the kitchen, washing dishes one evening. Samir walked in, phone in hand, wearing a smile that wasn't meant for me. It was soft, intimate, the kind of smile he used to give me years ago. I glanced at him, then at the phone. His screen dimmed too quickly. Just a blink. But I saw the name, M. He noticed me looking and asked if we were out of milk. That's it. That was the moment. A look, a screen, a name. Just one letter. M. I told myself I was overthinking, that people text their coworkers, friends, clients all the time. I didn't even ask. But something in his voice, a tremble, almost too smooth, unsettled me. It was like his tone had been rehearsed. Too casual. Too safe. Later that night, I brought it up. Softly, playfully even. Who's M? He didn't even blink. Just a guy from the office. Michael, I think. New guy. You think? I didn't say anything more. Just smiled and nodded. But a weird sensation settled in my chest, like fog wrapping itself around my ribs. My gut whispered he's lying. But my mind argued back. He's never given you a reason to doubt him. Don't be paranoid. Don't turn into one of those wives. And so I pushed it away. I buried the suspicion under everyday routine. Cooking dinner, folding laundry, grading papers, watching late-night sitcoms. I told myself that every marriage has moments of distance. Maybe I was just projecting my insecurities. Maybe I was just tired. But things kept slipping. Slipping in ways I couldn't ignore. One night, as I was putting away the dishes, I noticed a perfume I didn't recognize on his shirt. It wasn't mine. It was floral, expensive, and clingy. I leaned in close, hoping it was from a student, or maybe someone he'd hugged briefly. But that scent, it felt intentional, like it had been left there as a stamp. Again, I said nothing. I had no proof, just suspicion, just feelings. And feelings can lie, right? The next morning, he left earlier than usual. Claimed he had a team strategy session at a hotel conference room. No breakfast. No goodbye kiss. Just a quick pat on the back like I was a roommate instead of a wife. I stood in the doorway long after he'd driven off, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Something was unraveling. I could feel it in the bones of the walls, in the way the refrigerator hummed too loud, in the way the air tasted metallic. Still, I didn't say a word. That evening I tried to act normal. I lit candles, played his favorite jazz records, wore the navy dress he used to love. When he walked in, he smiled, tight, polite, as if he was stepping into a stranger's house. I asked him about his day. He said it was fine. No details. Just that word. Fine. He barely touched his dinner. He went to bed early. Turned away from me before I could reach out. And so the days passed. Samir became a ghost. Physically present, emotionally distant. He stopped talking about work. He locked his phone more often. Started sleeping with it under his pillow. He wouldn't let me touch it. If I asked, he'd say I was being intrusive. But the worst part? I started gaslighting myself. I started believing I was the problem. That maybe I'd let myself go. That maybe I wasn't exciting enough. Maybe I'd failed to keep the spark alive. One afternoon, I caught myself standing in front of the mirror, pulling at my face, comparing it to Instagram influencers, wondering if my skin was dull, if my thighs were too wide. I bought lingerie, I didn't need. Cooked dishes I didn't even like just because he used to compliment them. I even laughed at his jokes that weren't funny, just to feel some warmth again. But warmth never came. He was colder than ever. Then came a moment that felt like something from a movie, a subtle, fleeting moment, but one that lodged itself deep in my chest. He was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. I glanced at it, just once. A message from M. The preview read, "I miss you. Last night." That was it. That was the preview. My throat closed. My fingers shook. But I didn't open the message. I couldn't. I just couldn't. He came out moments later, towel around his waist, humming. When he saw me near his phone, he stopped humming. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just looking for the toothpaste." He picked up his phone immediately. Locked it. He never used to do that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned, my mind looping over every little thing. The smiles, the silence, the secrecy. Something was very, very wrong. And I wasn't imagining it. The next few days were a war between my instincts and my fear. I wanted to believe him. I really, really did. But belief without evidence is faith, and my faith in Samir was starting to bleed at the edges. I couldn't unsee that message. "I miss you. Last night." Those words replayed in my mind like a song stuck on repeat. I began noticing everything. Every flinch, every delayed response, every quick glance toward his buzzing phone. He became an actor in our home, and I was his silent audience. Watching. Waiting. Drowning in doubt. I started keeping notes. Not to be petty, but to keep myself from losing my grip on reality. If I didn't write things down, I feared I'd twist them in my head. Make them softer. Excuse them. Like I always did. Tuesday. Samir came home late. Said he had car trouble. No grease on hands. Clothes spotless. Phone on silent. Wednesday. No dinner appetite. Showered twice. Texted nonstop before bed. Thursday. Said he was going to meet a friend. Didn't say who. Returned at midnight smelling like hotel soap. By Friday, I stopped cooking for him. I stopped texting him sweet notes like I used to. And something strange began to happen. He didn't even notice. Or maybe he didn't care. That's when I knew for certain. You know, they say the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And Samir had mastered it. One night, I pretended to be asleep. He lay beside me, scrolling through his phone, fingers moving quickly. Then he slipped out of bed and into the hallway. I heard the soft click of the guest room door, the low murmur of his voice. He was talking to someone, whispering. I crept out of bed, my heart pounding so hard I was afraid it would give me away. I moved to the bedroom door and pressed my ear to the wood. His voice was low but clear enough. "No, she doesn't know. I'm being careful. I told you I'll figure it out. Just be patient." Silence. Then, "Yeah, me too. I miss you." My stomach turned. I stepped back like the door had burned me. My fingers dug into my palms, the nails leaving tiny half-moons as proof that this wasn't a dream. This was real. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the living room in the dark, staring at the wall, my mind racing. Tears threatened, but they never came. Not yet. I was too numb. My body had entered survival mode. When morning came, he walked out of the guest room like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just confessed betrayal to a ghost in the night. "Morning," he said, stretching. "You're up early." I nodded. Couldn't sleep. He leaned in to kiss me. I turned my face away. That was the first time I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. Just a flicker. Then it was gone. He left soon after, giving some excuse about needing to pick up something for work. The second he was gone, I grabbed his laptop. Password protected. Of course. I had never cared before. But now? Now it was a locked box of lies. I stood over it for a long time, then walked away. I wasn't going to hack into it. Not yet. I didn't want to sink to that level, at least not until I was ready for what I might find. But I needed answers. Real answers. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a private investigator. His name was Hamid, He spoke calmly, asked questions gently. He'd seen this 100 times before, but he didn't let that show. He just listened, took notes, promised discretion. I just need the truth, I told him. Even if it hurts. He nodded slowly. It usually does. For the next week, I pretended like everything was normal. Like I wasn't unraveling inside. Like I didn't already know what he was doing when he said he was going to work late. I smiled when he walked in. I laughed at his weak jokes. I kissed him on the cheek before bed. I played the role of the loyal wife perfectly. But every night, when he left the house under some new excuse, I forwarded the time and address to Hamid. The photos came 3 days later. They arrived in a discreet envelope. No return address. Just a thick, sealed packet of heartbreak. I waited until I was alone to open it. Inside were stills, Samir holding hands with a woman outside a boutique hotel. Samir laughing with her at dinner. Samir kissing her neck in a parked car. Samir entering her apartment at night. Samir leaving hours later. Each image was a dagger. The woman?
Young.
Maybe mid-20s. Long curly hair. A tattoo on her wrist and M. That was it.
M.
She wasn't even subtle. I stared at the last picture the longest. Samir holding her waist as they walked down a street I knew well, just 2 blocks from our home. 2 blocks. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the pictures apart, smash plates, call him, and spit every word of venom I had. But I didn't. I sat quietly, breathing, trembling, burning. Because I knew something else in that moment. Rage wouldn't help me. But a plan would. So I folded the photos neatly, tucked them into a drawer. Then I picked up my journal, turned to a fresh page, and wrote in capital letters. He cheated. He lied. He's going to regret it. Because now, I wasn't his loyal wife anymore. Now I was something else entirely. The day I decided to confront Samir, the sky was a heavy shade of gray, like even the heavens knew what was coming. I didn't choose a random moment. I planned it. He had just come back from one of his so-called business meetings, his hair slightly messy, shirt unbuttoned 1 extra notch, that same guilty scent of hotel soap clinging to him like a fog he couldn't see, but I could smell from miles away. I was seated at the dining table, calm too calm. A pot of biryani rested in the center, his favorite. I had even lit candles. The room was warm and still. Silent, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that held its breath. He looked at me, confused. What's the occasion? I smiled gently. I just thought we should eat together. Like old times. He shrugged off his coat, sat down, and dug in like nothing was wrong in the world. And I watched him. Every bite, every glance, every gulp of water. It was almost funny how normal he looked. Like a man with no secrets. Like someone who still thought he was winning the game. Samir, I said softly, letting his name linger in the air. He looked up, chewing. Yeah. How long have you been sleeping with her? The words fell like glass, sharp, sudden, shattering the illusion in one clean stroke. He froze. His fork hovered in the air. His eyes searched mine, panicked, confused. W, what are you talking about? I tilted my head. Don't lie.
Not now.
I have pictures. I know everything. His jaw clenched. The mask dropped. Slowly, he placed the fork down and leaned back in his chair. So you've been spying on me? No, I said coldly. I've been protecting my sanity. You gaslit me for months. Made me question my own gut. I had to find the truth.
He scoffed.
So now what? You want a divorce? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to the drawer, and pulled out the envelope. I dropped it in front of him. Open it. He hesitated. Open.
It. He did.
One by one, the photos spilled out. His eyes flicked through them, but his face didn't change. Not once. No guilt. No shame. Just cold acceptance. So that's it then, he said finally. You're going to throw everything away because of a few mistakes? My eyes widened. A few mistakes? You've been living a double life, Samir. Lying every day. Coming home to me after being with her. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. He laughed bitterly. You don't understand what it's like. Try me. She listens to me. She makes me feel seen. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. And I didn't. I said, voice trembling. He looked away. You were always busy. Your routines. Your moods. Your expectations. I just needed an escape. A silence fell. Not the kind filled with tension. The kind that confirms what you already feared. You know what hurts the most? I said quietly. I gave up pieces of myself to make this marriage work. I bent over backwards to love you, to believe in you. And the whole time, you were busy finding new places to hide your cowardice. He stood, agitated. I'm not a coward. Then be a man, I snapped. Own what you did. He walked away from the table, running his hand through his hair. I never planned for this to happen. It just did. You fell into her bed by accident.
He turned.
You don't get to be sarcastic. You're not perfect either. That stung. Because I knew where this was going. The blame game. The reversal. You cheated, I said. Don't try to twist this. This is on you. All of it. He didn't speak for a while. Then, in a low voice, he muttered, I didn't think you had it in you. The detective work. The confrontation. You always seemed softer. That was when I smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. You never really knew me, I said. You were so busy chasing your fantasy that you forgot you married a woman who doesn't break. She transforms. He stared at me, trying to find a response. But there was nothing left to say. I walked past him, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Somewhere you're not, I said without turning back. But we need to talk about this. Figure it out. I paused at the door. You had months to figure it out. I begged for your attention. I cried beside you in silence, hoping you'd notice. You didn't. He stepped forward, desperation creeping in.
Please don't do this.
We can fix it. I'll end it with her. I turned to face him. End it with her for what? To keep lying to me while you resent me for knowing the truth. I made a mistake.
No.
You made a decision. And with that, I walked out. The cold air hit me like a baptism. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe. I didn't know what came next, where I'd stay, what I'd do. But one thing was clear. I was done shrinking myself to fit his broken promises. Now it was my turn to rebuild. On my terms. And whether he regretted it or not, that was no longer my burden to carry. The days after I walked out were a blur. Samir's calls became relentless, but I never answered. His messages filled my inbox, each one more desperate than the last. I couldn't bring myself to even read them. I was done. I thought that was it. I thought I had made my peace with the situation. That was, until I received a phone call one evening, an unknown number flashing on my screen. I didn't want to pick up, but something inside urged me to. I answered. Hello. A long pause. Raya. The voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable, but I knew who it was. Samir, I said softly, my heart already beginning to race. What do you want? I need to see you, he said quickly, voice trembling. Please. It's urgent. I wanted to say no. I wanted to hang up and never hear his voice again. But part of me, some small, foolish part, was still hanging on to the echoes of our past. Where? I asked reluctantly, trying to control my emotions. There's a park near the old house. You remember? I did. It was where we used to walk, laugh, and dream. It was where everything started. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, swallowing hard. When I arrived at the park, I saw him sitting on a bench, hands clasped together tightly, as if he were holding onto something that could slip away. His posture was small, defeated, something I had never seen in him before. I took a deep breath before walking toward him. His head snapped up when he saw me, his eyes wide, almost panicked. Raya, thank you for coming, he whispered, standing up as if to embrace me. I stepped back instinctively, not wanting to fall into the familiarity of his touch. He flinched, but quickly recovered. I'm so sorry. I was a fool. I don't know what I was thinking. She made me feel like I was someone else. Like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible. I crossed my arms over my chest. Don't. He took a step closer, pleading. Raya, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. But you've got to believe me, I was lost. I didn't know how to get back to us. Stop lying, Samir, I said, my voice steady, but my heart pounding. You weren't lost. You were selfish. You chose her over me. No, he said, shaking his head fervently. It wasn't like that. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. But it doesn't mean I don't love you. I love you, Raya. I always have. I just got confused. I stared at him for a long moment, my emotions a chaotic storm inside. He was standing there, broken, vulnerable, and trying to make me believe in him again. I loved you too, Samir, I said softly, fighting to keep my voice from cracking. I did. But love isn't enough. It never was. His eyes darkened with frustration. What do you want from me then? What do you want me to do? The bitterness rose in me like an unspoken curse. I want you to feel the weight of your choices. I want you to understand what it means to break someone's trust. To betray them when they gave you everything. I want you to feel what I felt. He stepped forward, his face twisted with anguish. Raya, please. I can't lose you. You already have. I interrupted, my voice cold now. You lost me the moment you chose to lie. The moment you thought I would accept being second to someone else. I could see him struggling to hold back tears, but there was something else in his eyes, a recognition, like he was finally starting to understand. The truth was sinking in, and it was far more painful than he'd ever imagined. Raya, he said again, his voice cracking, I'll do anything. Just don't walk away from me. But there was nothing left to say. Nothing left to do. The man I had spent years loving and trusting was a stranger now, and I was done clinging to the ghost of what we used to be. I'm not going back, Samir, I said firmly. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. His face fell, a shadow passing over his features. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words never came. Instead, he dropped his gaze to the ground, as if realizing that the fight was over, that I had already made my decision. I turned to walk away, my heart heavy, but my steps resolute. Raya, please, his voice echoed in the emptiness, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I had already given him everything I had to give, and he had thrown it all away. I didn't look back as I left the park, but in my mind, the image of him standing there, lost, regretful, and empty, stayed with me. And it should have hurt.
It should have shattered me.
But instead, I felt something else. Relief. The burden had finally been lifted. The illusion had been shattered, and I was free. And for the first time in weeks, I knew it was time to move on. As I drove away from that place, I realized that the woman who walked away from that park was not the same woman who had walked into it. I had shed my fear, my doubt, my pain. And in its place, I found something I thought I had lost myself. I didn't know what came next, but I didn't need to. I had already survived the worst of it. And now it was time to rebuild. The days that followed felt like a slow, suffocating fog. Samir's attempts to reach me had become more frantic, more desperate. Every time I saw his name on my phone, I felt a pang in my chest, a reminder of the life we'd shared, the trust that had once been there, and how it had all crumbled into nothing. But I resisted. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. There was no forgiveness left in me. I had given everything to Samir. I had given him my love, my trust, and my belief that he was the person he promised to be. But when he chose someone else, when he betrayed me, he also chose to tear apart the life we had built together. And now, the aftermath was unavoidable. A week had passed since that night in the park, and yet, his shadow still loomed over me. The familiar places we had once shared no longer felt the same. Our home, which had once been filled with warmth and laughter, now felt cold and unfamiliar. Every corner reminded me of what we had lost. I found myself avoiding the spots that once brought me peace. I couldn't bring myself to visit the cafe where we used to go on lazy Sundays. Nor could I bear to sit in the living room where we had shared so many quiet moments. Instead, I immersed myself in work, in distractions, anything to keep my mind from wandering back to him. One afternoon, as I was at my desk, my phone buzzed with a message. I hadn't expected it, but when I saw the notification, my stomach dropped. It was from Samir. "I need to see you one last time. Please. You won't regret it." I stared at the message for a long time, the words repeating in my mind. A part of me wanted to reach out, to find some form of closure that had eluded me, but I knew better. Every time I allowed him back into my life, every time I weakened and gave him a chance to explain, I was only hurting myself more. But curiosity gnawed at me. What could he possibly want now? What could he say that would make everything okay? I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from me. I couldn't let it go, not without knowing the truth. I agreed to meet him, but this time I would not be swayed by his words. This time, I would hear him out, then walk away with no second thoughts. We agreed to meet at the same park where our last conversation had ended. I didn't know why I chose that place. Perhaps it was the finality of it, or maybe it was the ghosts of our pasts lingering in the air. But either way, I knew I had to face him one last time. When I arrived, Samir was already there. He was sitting on the same bench, but this time, he didn't stand up. He just sat there, his head bowed, his hands clenched in his lap. His body language was strange, defeated, almost as if he were waiting for something to happen, but didn't know what. I walked up to him, my step steady, but my heart racing. I stopped a few feet away, trying to hold on to the distance I had created between us. He finally looked up at me, his eyes hollow and dark, but there was something new in them, a strange mixture of fear and urgency. "Raya," his voice trembled as he spoke my name, as if it were a lifeline. "I need to tell you something. Something you don't know." I stayed silent, watching him carefully, trying to gauge his sincerity. "I've made so many mistakes, but this is something that's going to change everything," Samir said, his hands shaking as he spoke. "I wasn't just with her for a few weeks or a few months, it was years, Raya. She has been blackmailing me. I didn't know how to get out of it. She threatened to ruin everything, to expose me, to destroy everything I had with you." My breath caught in my throat. "Blackmail? What was he talking about? Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "Why didn't you come to me for help?" "I was too ashamed," he admitted, his eyes welling up with tears. "I thought you would leave me if you knew the truth. I was weak, and I thought I could fix it on my own. But I couldn't. And now it's too late." My heart pounded as I processed his words. The man I thought I knew, the man I loved, had been hiding so much from me, so many secrets, so many lies. "Then why did you do it, Samir?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you betray me if you knew it was wrong? If you knew the consequences?" "I don't know," he choked out, his face twisted in guilt. "I was scared. I didn't know who to trust. But she promised me everything would be fine if I just gave her what she wanted. I never thought it would go this far." I stood there, unable to speak. The words felt like a blur, like 1,000 pieces of a broken puzzle I couldn't quite put together. But then something changed. Something in the air shifted. Samir's eyes widened as he looked past me, and I followed his gaze. There, standing at the edge of the park, was someone I hadn't expected, someone I hadn't seen in years. It was the woman who had torn us apart, the one Samir had betrayed me for. I felt my stomach drop as she stepped forward, a smile playing on her lips, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. She looked at me with cold, calculating eyes. "You really think he's telling the truth?" she asked, her voice low, almost taunting. "You really think he's the victim here?" I turned to Samir, but before I could speak, he was already shaking his head, his face pale.
"No.
"No, this isn't what it looks like," he pleaded. But it was too late. The truth had already been exposed. "Raya, I wasn't just blackmailed," Samir whispered, his voice barely audible. "I was paid to be with her. She's been controlling me, manipulating me for years. I didn't have a choice. She made me do things I'm not proud of. But I never meant to hurt you. I froze. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. She had been the mastermind behind it all. She had played both of us, pulling strings, watching us fall apart. And now she was standing there, smug and victorious, knowing that Samir's confession would be the final nail in the coffin. For the first time in months, I felt the weight of everything we had lost. Not just the trust, not just the love, but the entire foundation of what I thought was my life. I looked at Samir one last time. "You're just as guilty as she is," I said softly, my voice breaking. "You chose her. You destroyed us." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving both of them standing in the park, locked in their web of lies. As I walked toward my car, I felt something new inside me, a sense of power, of control, of freedom. The betrayal had crushed me, yes. But now it was over. And I was finally free.